There is something quietly powerful about emotional calmness that most people overlook. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't try to prove anything, and yet it creates one of the strongest forms of attraction a man can feel. Because when a woman carries a calm, grounded presence, it does something psychological. It creates safety. And safety is magnetic, not in a loud or obvious way, but in a way that pulls someone in without resistance. Because in a world where so many interactions feel rushed, reactive, or emotionally unstable, calmness stands out. It feels different. It feels rare. When your energy is steady, when your reactions are measured, when you don't let every situation disturb your inner state, it changes how you are experienced. He doesn't feel pressure around you. He doesn't feel like he has to constantly manage the moment, explain himself, or anticipate a reaction. Instead, he feels at ease. And that ease is what lowers his defenses, because psychologically, when a person feels safe, they open up more. They engage more naturally. They stop holding back. Emotional calmness creates an environment where connection can happen without tension, without fear of conflict, without unnecessary complexity. And that's where attraction begins to grow. Not from excitement alone, not from intensity, but from comfort. From the feeling that being around you doesn't drain him, doesn't challenge him in a stressful way, but actually gives him a sense of balance. This doesn't mean you never express emotion. It means your emotions don't control the moment. You don't react impulsively. You don't escalate situations unnecessarily, and you don't bring chaos into simple interactions. Instead, you remain centered. You respond instead of react. And that difference is powerful, because most people are used to emotional unpredictability. They expect tension. They expect overreactions. They expect situations to become complicated. But when that doesn't happen, when your presence remains calm and grounded, it creates a contrast that is deeply felt. He begins to associate you with peace. And people are naturally drawn to what brings them peace. Not because it's exciting in a dramatic way, but because it feels right. It feels stable. It feels like something they can trust. And trust is one of the strongest foundations of attraction. Because when someone feels safe with you, they don't just enjoy your presence. They seek it. They come back to it. They think about it because it's not something they experience everywhere. Emotional calmness doesn't chase attention. It doesn't try to impress, but it creates a lasting impact. It allows connection to grow naturally, without force, without pressure. And over time, that calm presence becomes something he values deeply because it gives him something he doesn't find often, a space where he can simply be without resistance. And deep down, he feels it, because your calmness doesn't just make you attractive, it makes you unforgettable. And while calmness creates safety, there is another subtle shift that changes how attraction forms, how and where you place your attention. Because attention is not just interaction, it's value. And when it is given constantly without thought, it loses its impact. But when it is selective, intentional, and balanced, it does something powerful. It increases your perceived value. Because what is always available is rarely questioned. When your attention is pastiani, when you are always responding, always present, always accessible, it becomes predictable. And predictability, while comfortable, does not always create attraction. It creates familiarity, but without contrast, familiarity can turn into something that is taken for granted. But when your attention is selective, everything changes. It doesn't mean you become distant or unavailable in an artificial way. It means you are intentional. You don't give your time and energy automatically. You give it when it feels right, when it aligns, when there is genuine connection. And that creates a shift, because now your presence is not something he assumes. It's something he notices. He begins to feel the difference between when you are fully engaged and when you are focused elsewhere. He becomes more aware of your attention because it is no longer constant, it has value. And psychologically, this activates something important, the scarcity effect. What is not always available becomes more desirable, not because it is being withheld, but because it is not provisioning. It's not something he can predict or rely on without effort. And that unpredictability, when it is natural and not forced, creates curiosity. He starts to pay more attention, not in a pressured way, but in a focused way. Because now he is aware that your attention is not automatic. It is something that exists when there is real engagement, and that makes him value it more when he receives it, because it feels chosen. There is a difference between attention that is given freely to everyone and attention that feels intentional. One feels common, the other feels meaningful. And meaningful attention creates emotional impact. It makes conversations feel more engaging, moments feel more present, and connection feel more real. Because it is not diluted by being constant. It is strengthened by being intentional. This also creates balance. You are not over-investing, not giving more than is being reciprocated, not losing yourself in the connection. Instead, you maintain your own space, your own focus, your own life outside of the interaction. And that independence strengthens attraction, because it shows that your attention is not driven by need. It is driven by choice. And choice carries power. He begins to understand that when you are present, it's because you want to be, not because you have to be. And that understanding changes how he experiences you, because now your attention is not just something he receives. And over time, that value creates a deeper level of attraction, one that is not based on constant interaction, but on meaningful presence. And deep down he knows this, because when your attention is selective, it doesn't just make you noticeable, it makes you unforgettable. And once that balance of attention is felt, once your presence carries value instead of being constant, something else begins to deepen the connection in a powerful way, genuine appreciation. Because beyond attraction, beyond curiosity, there is a fundamental human need that shapes how someone feels around you. The need to feel seen, not just noticed, but recognized. When a man feels genuinely appreciated, something shifts internally. It's not about flattery. It's not about exaggeration. It's about authenticity. The ability to acknowledge who he is, what he does, and how he shows up in a way that feels real. And that creates emotional reward. Because psychologically, when someone feels valued, their brain begins to associate that feeling with the person who gave it. It becomes a positive emotional loop. He feels good around you, not because of what you say alone, but because of how you make him feel about himself. And that feeling is powerful. It's not loud, it's not forced, it's subtle, but it stays. Because genuine appreciation doesn't try to impress, it connects. It reaches something deeper than surface-level attraction. It creates comfort, confidence, and a sense of being understood. But the key is that it has to be real. Because people can feel the difference between something said out of habit and something that comes from true observation. When appreciation is generic, it fades quickly. But when it is specific, when it reflects something you actually notice about him, it carries weight. It shows presence. It shows that you're paying attention, not just to what he says, but to who he is. And that level of awareness creates a deeper emotional bond because it makes him feel recognized in a way that is not common. Most people overlook this. They assume attraction is built on appearance, on excitement, on intensity. But in reality, it is often strengthened by something much simpler, the feeling of being valued without having to prove it constantly. And that's what genuine appreciation creates. It removes pressure. It allows him to feel comfortable being himself without needing to perform or impress at every moment. And when someone feels that kind of ease, they naturally want to stay in that environment. They return to it because it feels good, not just externally, but internally. This doesn't mean constant praise or overexpression. In fact, too much can lose its impact. Just like attention, appreciation needs balance. It needs to come naturally at the right moments, in a way that feels aligned with what you genuinely feel. And when it does, it becomes memorable, because it's not something he experiences everywhere. Over time, he begins to associate you with that feeling of being understood, being valued, being seen without effort. And that association builds attraction on a deeper level, one that is not based on surface qualities but on emotional connection. And deep down, he feels it, because genuine appreciation doesn't just make him like you. It makes him feel something he doesn't want to lose. And as appreciation builds that sense of being seen, something else begins to shape how deeply that connection can grow. The way you communicate, not just what you say, but how you say it. Because tone, pace, and emotional control carry more weight than most people realize. And this is where soft communication becomes powerful. Soft communication is not about being quiet or passive. It's about being composed. It's about expressing yourself in a way that does not create unnecessary tension, does not trigger defensiveness, and does not turn simple moments into conflicts. It's the ability to speak with clarity while maintaining calmness, even when the situation could easily go in another direction. And that changes everything, because when communication feels safe, people listen differently. When your words are delivered with softness, steady tone, controlled emotion, clear intention, it lowers his defenses. He doesn't feel attacked, he doesn't feel judged, and he doesn't feel the need to protect himself in the moment. Instead, he becomes more open. And openness is where real connection happens. Most people react. They raise their voice, they push their point, they let emotion take control of the conversation. And when that happens, the focus shifts from understanding to defending. The moment becomes about who is right, not about what is real. But soft communication avoids that completely. It keeps the focus on connection, not conflict. When you speak in a composed and grounded way, even when addressing something serious, it creates a different kind of response. He doesn't feel pressured or cornered. He feels invited to understand. And that invitation is what allows communication to go deeper, because now it's not about reacting. It's about listening. He hears your words, not just your tone. He processes what you're saying instead of preparing a defense. And that creates clarity, not confusion. This also builds trust, because consistent, calm communication shows emotional stability. It shows that you are not unpredictable, not reactive, not someone who turns small issues into large problems. And that stability makes him feel more comfortable engaging with you. He knows that conversations won't turn into chaos. And that sense of safety in communication is rare. It allows both of you to express yourselves without fear of escalation, without the provincial tension that many interactions carry. It creates space for honesty, for understanding, for real connection to grow over time. And that's what makes it attractive, not in a surface level way, but in a deeper, lasting way, because it shows emotional intelligence, control, and maturity, all of which are qualities that naturally draw people in. It's not about saying less. It's about saying things in a way that connects instead of divides. And when you master that, every interaction carries more meaning, because it's not just communication, it's connection. And deep down, he feels it, because the way you speak doesn't just make him listen, it makes him want to understand you. And as communication becomes calm and meaningful, something even more powerful begins to define how he sees you, not just in moments with him, but in the way you live your life outside of him. Because attraction is not built only on connection. It's built on who you are when you're not trying to connect. This is where independent energy changes everything. Because when your life does not revolve around him, when your time, your focus, and your identity are not centered around the connection, it sends a clear message. Your value does not depend on his presence. And that creates respect, not forced, not demanded, but naturally formed. Because independence shows that you have your own direction, your own priorities, your own sense of self that exists whether he is there or not. And that kind of self-possession is deeply attractive because it removes pressure. He doesn't feel like he has to constantly fill your time, meet every expectation, or carry the weight of your emotional state. Instead, he experiences you as someone who is already complete, already grounded, already moving forward in life. And that changes the dynamic, because now the connection is not about need. It's about choice. You are not with him because you have to be. You are with him because you want to be. And that distinction is powerful because it shifts how he values your presence. He understands that your time is not unlimited, that your attention is not automatic, that being part of your life is something that exists alongside everything else you are building, not something that replaces it, and that creates a different kind of attraction. One that is rooted in respect, not just emotion, because independence signals self-worth. It shows that you are not easily influenced, not easily dependent, not someone who loses themselves in a connection. Instead, you maintain your own space, your own growth, your own identity, and that makes you stand out. Because many people, when they feel connection, begin to center everything around it. They give more time, more attention, more energy than necessary, and in doing so, they slowly lose the balance that made them attractive in the first place. But when you remain independent, that balance stays intact. You continue growing, continue focusing on your own life, continue building something that exists beyond the relationship, and that creates a sense of stability that is deeply appealing because it shows that you are not looking to be completed. You are already whole. And when someone is whole, their presence feels different. It feels intentional. It feels chosen. And that makes it more valuable. Over time, he begins to see you not just as someone he is attracted to, but as someone he respects. Someone who has a life, a direction, a sense of purpose that does not depend on him. And that combination, attraction and respect, is what creates something lasting. And deep down, he knows this because your independence doesn't push him away. It makes him want to step closer on his own. And when all of these elements come together, the calmness, the selective attention, the appreciation, the way you communicate, your independence. There is one final layer that quietly keeps everything alive in his mind. Something subtle but incredibly powerful. It's the space you don't fill, the part of you don't fully reveal. This is where emotional mystery begins to work. Because when everything is known, the mind relaxes. There is no need to think further, no reason to wonder, no curiosity left to explore. But when something is not fully revealed, when there are layers that unfold over time instead of all at once, the mind stays engaged. And engagement creates attraction. This doesn't mean playing games or being distant in a confusing way. It means allowing your depth to be discovered gradually, not explaining everything, not reacting to every moment with full emotional exposure, not making every thought immediately visible. Because when you leave space, the mind fills it. He begins to think about you more. Not because you told him to, not because you forced it, but because there is something left to understand. Something that isn't Polness too clear, something that invites curiosity instead of closing it. And curiosity is powerful. It keeps attention alive. It makes him replay conversations, analyze moments, wonder about your perspective, your feelings, your next move, not in a stressful way, but in a way that keeps you present in his thoughts, even when you're not physically there. Because now, you are not fully predictable. And predictability, while comfortable, does not always create lasting attraction. But mystery, when it is natural and grounded, creates depth. It creates layers that unfold over time, giving the connection room to grow instead of becoming static. He doesn't feel like he has everything figured out. And that keeps him interested. It gives him a reason to stay engaged, to continue learning about you, to pay attention in a deeper way. Because every interaction holds something new, something that isn't Polness you expected. And that's what makes it feel alive. Most people reveal everything too quickly. They share every thought, every feeling, every reaction without pause. And while that may feel honest, it removes the space where curiosity can exist. It answers every question before it has time to form. But when you allow things to unfold naturally, when you don't rush to explain everything, when you keep a part of your depth reserved for time to reveal, it creates something different. It creates intrigue, not forced, not artificial, but real because you are not trying to be mysterious. You are simply not rushing to be Polness you known. And that makes every moment with you feel more meaningful, more layered, more worth exploring. Over time, this keeps the connection from becoming predictable or provincial. It stays engaging, it stays dynamic, it stays something that continues to grow. And deep down, he feels it, because it's not just who you are that attracts him. It's the part of you he's still trying to understand that he can't stop thinking about.